I remember in English class when we would look at the main types of conflicts. Typically, those conflicts were pertaining to literature. You had man versus man versus nature, man versus himself, man versus machines, man versus society. Those were the most common. If you study human history, you will come to the conclusion that the largest conflicts are man versus man. The leading cause of death for people throughout history is other people. Typically people of the same ethnicity and on the same continents. Now, why is that? Why is it that most Europeans were killed by other Europeans and most Africans were killed by other Africans? You had two things. One, you had lack of access to other continents. Before you had boats, before people learned how to navigate, people were confined to their particular continents. You also had conquest. That's why an early study of Western history is basically all warfare. War between Germany, France, and the British, because they lived in close proximity to one another and they wanted to conquer those territories. Even the deadliest war in history, which was the Second World War, which had over 70 million fatalities, was mostly between European powers. That's where most of the battles were at, if you exclude Japan. Even though today the military employs new technology, like drones, you still have a human behind that weapon. Being genuinely curious, I looked at multiple sources and I found the median that would give me their estimations of how many people have died in war since the beginning of time. I used Wikipedia, the New York Times, medical device industry, Healthline, and Our World Data. Then I looked at their median, their average. The experts estimate between 150 million to 1 billion people have died in war since the beginning of time. Now, of course, that's hard to tell because you have population changes and a lack of records. For instance, most of the history of ancient Egypt is widely unknown because of the lack of records, and the pharaohs would destroy their predecessors' records. What about disease? Well, how are diseases carried? Typically from human to human. If you look at the plague specifically, which was the largest pandemic and still is to this day on record, you have to factor in the poor sanitation and hygiene. I mean, you had poop in the streets because you didn't have sewage systems. People didn't shower back then like they do today. And that caused the spread of infested rats all over Europe. To be fair, I give that to the rats and indirectly to the humans and just the lack of sanitation, ignorance at the time. What about natural disasters? Well, they still don't hold a candle to the carnage that humans have inflicted on one another. To make this easier, let's be succinct and put this into context of the 20th century. In the 20th century alone, 81.5 billion people have died because of war, 800,000 because of diseases, less than 5 billion from all diseases including cancer. Even if you add all world disasters and all world diseases, it's still a drop in the bucket to the amount of deaths that man inflicts upon one another. 81.5 billion compared to 500 billion from all diseases. That's why man versus man is the main conflict, and that's why humans are going to be the own source of their own destruction.